There's a look husbands give nannies when they think their wives aren't watching. A flash too long. A compliment too practiced. At first, I chalked it up to flattery. Harmless, maybe. But the way his voice lowered when he said her name? That wasn't innocent. If betrayal whispers louder than screams in your world, like, share and subscribe, because what happens next isn't about confrontation. It's about the slow, satisfying twist of the knife. The nanny's name was Callie, 26. Tight ponytail. College grad. Fit like a yoga instructor and smiled like she'd practiced it in the mirror. She was efficient, polite, and just flirty enough to keep my husband feeling noticed. I caught them one Thursday morning. Not in bed, not yet, but in the kitchen. She leaned too close as he sipped coffee. Her laugh too light. His hand lingered too long on her arm. I was supposed to be upstairs folding the baby's laundry. I didn't say a word. I smiled. And that's when the plan began. I waited 2 weeks. Dropped casual hints. You're too talented for babysitting forever, Callie. I told her about Lucinda, my husband's CEO's wife, how she was desperate for a new nanny with more polish. You'd be perfect, I said. And the salary? Triple. Callie took the bait. Lucinda was thrilled. By the time she moved out of our home and into theirs, I already had a private investigator on retainer. Because I knew one thing about men like my husband. He doesn't cheat because he's tempted. He cheats because he's confident he won't be caught. Callie's eyes lit up when I told her Lucinda was very private, very upscale, and very generous. The kind of woman who didn't shop for nannies, she poached them. I even offered to write the letter of recommendation myself. And I did. With every word, I gift-wrapped my husband's mistress and delivered her to the only woman in town with the power to destroy him. Lucinda ran a gallery, hosted elite wine auctions, and had a taste for order. Her husband, Charles Hartford, was Jason's CEO, controlled, methodical, allergic to scandal. The man hated headlines more than taxes. And his wife. She was the only person in the company's orbit who actually held influence. If Lucinda sneezed, Charles changed the ventilation system. Callie moved into their guest house on a Tuesday. By Friday, my private investigator sent me the first photo. Jason's car parked 2 blocks from the Hartfords' gated home. He walked in through the back entrance. The next shot? Callie answering in silk. It only took 2 visits. Then 4. By the end of the second week, Jason had forgotten the one rule of corporate survival: don't touch what belongs to your boss. He thought he'd traded up, that he'd escaped detection. But he walked right into the lion's den, dragging his ego behind him. I didn't send the photos. Not yet. I didn't need to. I simply dropped Lucinda a bottle of wine one afternoon, thanked her for saving me from chaos, and mentioned, casually, how I hoped Callie was settling in well. Lucinda smiled. She's attentive. I could see it in her eyes. The suspicion. The first flicker of something not quite right. All I had to do was wait. Lucinda Hartford was no fool. She dressed like grace, but walked like control. The kind of woman who'd fire you with a thank you card and flowers delivered to your car. When she suspected, she didn't confront. She observed. I knew that look, tight smile, eyes a little too still. She'd seen something. Or heard something. Or maybe Callie's silk robe had shown up in a different color than she remembered buying. That weekend, Lucinda invited me for coffee. Her tone was cordial. Curious. How well did you know Callie? She asked, stirring espresso with slow, deliberate circles. Well enough to know she has a type, I replied, without looking up. She held my gaze. That was the moment. The shift. The unspoken truth now sitting between us, steeping like the tea neither of us touched. Lucinda's hand hovered over her phone. Do you believe in timing? Only when it's perfect. I left the USB drive on her counter. No words. Just walked away. Inside were time-stamped photos, screenshots of texts, and calendar entries. Jason's excuses, Callie's availability, GPS logs that matched too neatly. By Monday morning, Jason's name had been stripped from the quarterly agenda. He came home that night panicked, sweating through his shirt, ranting about internal politics and sudden restructuring. I listened. I nodded. I poured his wine. And I let him believe the walls were just coincidentally closing in. The next day, Lucinda called me. Her voice was even. "Thank you," she said. "I've handled it." Callie was gone by nightfall. Jason didn't even notice until I told him. "She moved on," I said. Like all good nannies do. The official reason was restructuring. The unofficial truth? Lucinda handed Jason's head to Charles like a party favor. Jason came home mid-afternoon on a Thursday, his face pale, tie askew, silence hanging off him like sweat. He didn't say much, just poured a drink and sat. The way he stared at the wall told me everything I needed to know. "You're home early," I said, without turning from the stove. I let that sit for a beat. "Why?" He hesitated. "Budget. Reorganization. You know how these things go." He still thought I didn't know. Men like Jason think the sky collapses only when thunder hits. They forget sometimes clouds just drift lower until the breath leaves the room. I nodded, served dinner. Watched him pick at his food like it might accuse him. The man who used to command meetings with confidence now looked like he couldn't finish a sentence. Meanwhile, Lucinda invited me to lunch. Not coffee. Not brunch. Lunch. The kind where deals are made and power is silently handed over. She told me Charles offered her a formal advisory role in the company, internal affairs, culture management. She declined, but she suggested someone else. Me. I didn't say yes. Not right away. I smiled. "Wouldn't that be awkward?" I asked. "Only for your husband," she said. We clinked glasses. By the end of the week, I was consulting for the company that once wrote my husband's checks, sitting in the meetings he used to lead, reviewing reports he once faked, restructuring the structure that had no room for men who thought women were background noise. He asked if we could go to therapy, not because he regretted the affair, but because he regretted the outcome. Jason believed, in that deep recess where fragile men hide, that consequences are negotiable if you offer remorse. But remorse isn't currency. Not when the woman you cheated on now sits 2 levels above your old job and still wakes up in your house. "I want to fix things," he said one night, voice cracked, ego fractured. "Then start with your resume," I replied. I didn't file for divorce. I didn't need to. I made our marriage a glass box, no walls, no warmth, just visibility. He now lived in the echo of what he destroyed. The bedroom was silent. The respect, extinct. He went from confident provider to houseplant. All roots, no bloom. And I hired a new nanny. Older, smarter, ex-military. Speaks 4 languages and doesn't smile unless the child does something extraordinary. Jason barely makes eye contact with her. Good. Because he needed to know that trust, once cracked, never heals the same. And some women don't leave. They stay. And reign. At work, I advised Charles and Lucinda on executive transitions and internal risk. I'm respected. Listened to. Occasionally feared. Lucinda and I have lunch once a month. No wine. Just quiet understanding and mutual clarity. Jason doesn't ask about those lunches anymore. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share for more of such stories on betrayal, cheating, and family drama, and cunning revenge.